Mark couldn't move. The deafening clatter of hammers, saws, and workers shouting around him seemed to vanish, replaced by a blank, brutal silence. He stood in the middle of the construction site, surrounded by wet concrete, dust, and towering rebar. But he saw only one thing. Her, Angela, the woman he hadn't seen in 4 months, the woman who left his life without a word. Except this wasn't the Angela he remembered. She wore a loose, grimy construction uniform, a hard hat barely fitting over her tied-back hair, and her face was streaked with sweat and dust beneath the harsh noon sun of New York City. What stopped Mark's world cold wasn't the dirt or the helmet. It was the pronounced swell of her belly. She was pregnant, nearly 5 months by his estimate. She was struggling to lift a small sack of cement. Every step looked like a fight. Their eyes met. "Angela!" Mark didn't even finish the thought. The sack of cement slipped from her arms and slammed to the ground, bursting a dusty cloud. In an instant he saw everything in her eyes: shock, fear, and a deep, piercing shame that stabbed through his chest. After a second of stunned stillness, she bent, turned her back on him, and started walking away, disappearing into the forest of scaffolding and steel. "Angela!" Mark's voice tore out, rough and ragged. He lurched forward, tripping over a heap of gravel, but not caring. "Angela!" he called again, louder, more desperate. She never looked back. She kept walking until the unfinished building swallowed her in shadow. She was gone, like a ghost. Mark stood there, panting, heart pounding, as if it would break free of his ribs. This project, his gleaming high-rise at Hudson Yards, was supposed to be the symbol of his triumph. Now it felt like a cruel joke, a monument to his failure. "Sir, you okay?" It was Joe, the grey-haired foreman. His worried voice snapped Mark out of the trance. Mark stared blankly at him. "Sir Mark?" Joe shook his arm lightly. Mark swallowed hard, forcing himself into the present. Who was she?" he asked, his voice shaking. Joe frowned. "Who, sir?" "Lot of people around here." "The pregnant one, the one who dropped the cement." Mark forced the words out. Each felt like a thorn. "Ah, Angela," Joe said. "She's new. 2 weeks. Works hard despite her condition, Angela." The name hit him like a slap. He wasn't imagining things. In a rush, the memory of that night 4 months ago came back. The fury, the shouting, the accusations. They'd stood in the middle of their sprawling penthouse, the city's cold light pouring through floor-to-ceiling glass as witness. A pearl necklace, an heirloom from Mark's grandmother, was missing. Every neatly presented evidence his mother, Victoria Bennett, had gathered pointed at Angela. "Thief!" "Liar!" He'd spat the words, his voice full of bitterness and disgust. He couldn't accept that the woman he loved, the woman he trusted, could do that. "That's not true, Mark." "I don't know where it is." "Please believe me," Angela had begged, tears streaming without end. But Mark was deaf. Pride, fed by his mother's whispers, outweighed everything. He'd grabbed Angela's clothes from the closet and hurled them onto the floor. "Get out!" "I don't want to see your face here. Get out of my life." The last thing he saw was the shattered look on her face before she turned and walked out. The slam of the door echoed in his head for weeks. "Sir?" Joe's voice pulled him back again. Mark pressed a palm to his forehead. The memory was still raw, still painful. 5 months. Angela's belly looked 5 months along. They'd been apart for 4. The math was simple and merciless. The child she carried was his. A fierce throb of regret and self-loathing spread through him. How could he have done it? How could he have thrown out the woman he loved, pregnant with their child, over a necklace? Shock hardened into a white-hot resolve. He faced Joe, eyes burning. "Joe," he said, voice clipped, commanding, I need everything on her. Full name, address, phone, everything. Angela's last name? Joe asked. Angela Carter, Joe said. But sir, this might cross a privacy line. I don't care, Mark snapped, loud enough that nearby workers flinched. Do it. Now fear flashed over Joe's face. He gave a quick nod and hurried off. Mark slid into his black luxury SUV at the curb. The air conditioning did nothing for the heat raging inside him. Cold sweat beaded at his temples. Angela's image looped in his mind. Her filthy clothes, the strain on her face, the life she carried. How had she ended up like this? The same woman who once crackled with light and dreams, who had done nothing but love him, was now hauling cement just to survive. And he, Mark Bennett, was the reason. Minutes stretched like hours. Every second scraped. At last, Joe sprinted back with a slip of paper. Mark flung the door open. Where is she? He demanded. Joe bent, breathless, eyes full of worry and pity. Sir, he hesitated. Say it, Joe. Joe drew a breath. She's gone, sir. I was about to ask the office for her records, but she beat me there. She resigned, picked up her last pay and left, 10 minutes ago. Mark's blood went cold. 10 minutes. He'd missed her by 10 minutes. Did she leave an address? Anything? Mark asked, voice scraped raw. Joe shook his head, guilt clouding his eyes. Nothing, sir. All she told the staff was, she's never coming back. The words hit Mark like bullets. He slammed the door and pounded the steering wheel, fury and frustration exploding through him. No. No outside. Joe could only watch as the SUV shot away in a haze of dust. Mark drove aimlessly, tears he didn't feel streaking down his face. He'd found her, and in a blink, she was gone again. But this time, he knew he wouldn't stop. He would find Angela and their child, if it was the last thing he did. He tore away from the site like a trapped animal set loose. The gleaming towers along the river looked like giant headstones, cold and lifeless. Every polished corner of the city he'd once bragged about was now a reminder of the world he'd denied Angela. He heard Joe's words on loop. She said she's never coming back. He struck the wheel again, a strangled cry ripping free. Where would she go? How do you find someone who doesn't want to be found? And if he did, what would he even say? Forgive me, I threw you out while you were carrying our child, because I believed a lie. The thought alone tasted bitter. Without fully realizing it, he drove home, to the penthouse where everything began and ended. As the elevator rose to the top floor, each passing second felt like a hammer pounding his temple. The memory of their last argument returned whole. The cruel words he'd hurled, the tears Angela tried to hide. The doors opened onto a vast, silent living room. Italian marble gleamed. Paintings hung in perfect order. What once meant success now felt like a soulless mausoleum, a gilded cage. He poured whiskey, swallowed hard, hoping it would dull the ache. It only inflamed it. He paced, mind racing through every place Angela might hide. Then his eye caught the glass display cabinet along the wall, the Bennett family's antique vault. In the center, glowing under soft light, resting on red velvet, lay the pearl necklace. Mark froze as if drenched in ice. He stepped closer, eyes widening. Not a replica, the original. He knew every pearl by heart. He remembered his mother's story about finding the jewelry box open and the necklace missing the morning after a minor quarrel with Angela. He remembered Victoria's crocodile tears and staged devastation. In a snap, everything aligned, an ugly picture of deception. The sudden theft, the evidence that all pointed to Angela. His mother's insistence that only Angela could have done it. It had been a setup, a perfect trap devised by Victoria Bennett. Mark stumbled back and braced against the wall, clutching his chest. He was gasping as if he'd run for miles. The anger that had been simmering curdled into something darker. Disgust. "Good evening." The calm voice floated from the hallway. Victoria Bennett stepped into the room in an elegant silk robe, hair immaculate despite the hour. A queen surveying her domain, smiling. The smile faltered when she saw Mark's face and where he was looking. "Mark, what's wrong?" she asked, feigning concern. He didn't answer. Slowly, he raised a trembling hand and pointed at the cabinet. "What is that doing here?" His voice was low, dangerous. Victoria glanced at the necklace. For a second, Mark saw surprise flicker in her eyes. Then it vanished beneath ice-cold composure. "Oh, that? Didn't I mention? The investigators I hired got it back. Tracked it to a pawn shop in the Diamond District on 47th Street. Looks like the thief tried to sell it, then got scared." The lie was polished, believable if he hadn't seen Angela that morning. Mark smiled without warmth. "The thief again. Really? Or maybe it never left this apartment. What are you implying?" Victoria's brow twitched upward. "You're doubting me." "I saw her today, Mom," he said, each word heavy. "I saw Angela." The name detonated between them. Victoria's perfect posture wavered. "She was carrying cement on one of my sites," Mark went on, voice quaking with leashed fury. "Her clothes were filthy, her face exhausted. And she's pregnant, Mom." "She's pregnant." The mask fell from Victoria's face. Her eyes hardened into ice. "So you know," she said flatly, not bothering to lie. The admission punched Mark in the gut. "Why?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "Why did you do it?" "Because I had to," she said, emotionless. "I protected you. I protected this family." "Our name protected me," Mark exploded. "I threw out the woman I love, the mother of my child, because of a lie you engineered." "She isn't for you," Victoria snapped, voice rising. "She's a social worker with nothing to offer. No money, no name. She would have ruined your life." "My plans for you?" Mark shook his head, eyes full of revulsion. "Your plans, not mine. She's my life, Mom. She and our child." "That child is a mistake," Victoria said, steel cold. Whatever respect Mark had left died. He stepped close, face inches from hers. She flinched, fear in her eyes for the first time. "Listen to me," he said, voice calm and venomous. "As of tonight, you no longer have a son named Mark." He drew a breath. "You destroyed my life." He turned, brushing a priceless vase off a table as he passed. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. The crack ricocheted through the penthouse. He didn't look back. He walked out and slammed the door, a declaration of war. Victoria stood alone, staring at the shards on the floor, her face blank, while her hand trembled on her robe. For the first time in years, she'd lost control. Outside, Mark slid into his car. The rage had cooled, confusion had burned away. In its place remained a single, immovable purpose. He would find Angela, and this time, nothing would stop him, not even his mother. The noise of the South Bronx morning was chaotic. Dogs barking, vendors calling, sirens in the distance, the rumble of the subway. For Angela, that noise had become a hiding place. For 4 months, she had been a shadow, just another face in the crowd, far from the judgmental eyes of Mark Bennett's luxurious world. Her room was a tiny second-floor unit in a run-down walk-up, barely space for a thin mattress, a small table, and a plastic chair. Paint curled off the walls. The window hung with a torn curtain. It was her kingdom and her prison. She had just fled. After the shock of seeing Mark at the site, the fragile world she'd been building collapsed. The walls around her heart crumbled. She resigned on the spot, grabbed her meager pay, and ran, not sure where, just away. Now she sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at nothing. One hand cupped her belly, where she felt her child shift. This was all she had left, the only reason she woke up each day. A hard knock cut through her thoughts. "Angela, open up. I know you're in there." The voice was familiar, firm, authoritative. Patricia Brooks, her best friend, the only person from her old life who knew where she'd gone. Angela hesitated. She didn't want the lecture she knew was coming, but the next knock was even louder. "Angela Carter, I'm going to break this door." Angela sighed and stood slowly. When she opened the door, a woman in a sharply tailored business suit swept in. Patricia, tall, impeccably dressed, eyes so sharp they could pierce steel, looked like a contradiction in the cramped poverty of the room. She glanced around and shook her head, a mix of pity and frustration on her face. "What is this, Angela?" she asked, voice tight. "How long do you plan to hide here? How long will you keep punishing yourself?" Angela sank back onto the mattress. "You don't understand, Pat." "What don't I understand?" Patricia shot back, temper flaring. "That a jerk threw you out? That you ran from everything? That you're living in a place I wouldn't put a dog in? Have you lost your mind? Look at yourself. You're pregnant. What do you want me to do?" Angela's voice cracked. "Beg him? Kneel to him? And to his mother? I can't. I still have some dignity." Patricia knelt in front of her, eyes softening. "This isn't about dignity, Ange. It's about you and your baby. You don't have to do this alone. Come stay with me. We'll take Mark to court if we have to." Angela shook her head. "No, I won't drag you into this, and I don't want him knowing about the baby." "Too late," Patricia said bitterly. Angela froze. "What do you mean?" "Bennett's office called me," Patricia said. "A private investigator. He's looking for you, and he won't stop." A cold fear crawled over Angela's skin. Mark was looking for her. Her secret wasn't secret anymore. Meanwhile, across New York, Mark was turning the city inside out. After confronting his mother, he hired the best private investigators. He gave them Angela's name and the last place he'd seen her. "Find her," he ordered, voice flat. Bennett Tower's executive suite became a war room, maps spread across the conference table, phones ringing without pause. Every lead followed. He called everyone who might know Angela, but hit a wall of silence. "Sir," one investigator said on the phone, "we got something from a worker at the site, Foreman Joe. Took time to get him talking. Seems loyal to the target." Mark sat up. "What did he say?" "Possible location in the South Bronx. No exact address, but she went that way after shifts." The name landed like a blow. He'd only ever read about the neighborhood in grim reports. He couldn't fathom Angela, his Angela, ending up there. "Give me everything," he said sharply. An hour later, Mark drove through the city, leaving the sleek lines of Midtown for narrow streets and iron fire escapes. The smell, trash, exhaust, street food seeped into the leather of his car. People stared, curious, suspicious. Who was this rich man who'd lost his way? He parked on a corner and walked, following the directions he'd been given. His Italian suit and leather shoes felt like a sin in that alley. He reached a darker, narrower passage. At the end stood an old two-story building, paint peeled, railings rusted. This had to be it. He climbed a steep, cramped stairwell, breathing heavier with each step. A door on the second floor stood ajar. Voices drifted out. "You can't hide forever, Angela." "He has a right to know," a woman said. "A right?" Angela's voice answered, shot through with pain. "Where was my right when he threw me out? Where was our child's right when he let us suffer?" Mark couldn't stand it another second. He pushed the door in. Two women spun toward him, shocked. Patricia stood, anger flashing across her face. But Mark saw only Angela, still on the mattress, eyes huge with fear and surprise. The room was worse than he'd imagined. The air smelled of poverty and damp. The sight of the woman he'd once promised the world, boxed into a shoebox, shattered his heart. He stood by the door, mute, frozen. The space between them was only a few feet, but it felt like a canyon he didn't know how to cross. "Mark," Angela whispered, his name a mix of venom and longing. There, in the grime and desperation, standing before the woman he'd wounded so deeply, Mark knew this was the start of the hardest journey of his life. The journey back to her. Silence pressed on the room. Only the distant street noise filtered in, barking, a car horn, a train's low thunder. Dust swirled in a shaft of light cutting through the dirty window. Patricia moved first, stepping between them like a lioness shielding her cub. "What are you doing here?" she asked, each word edged. "Who told you could just show up?" But Mark's eyes didn't leave Angela. He saw the tremor in her hands cradling her belly, the fear in her eyes. Every detail of her suffering cut his conscience like a knife. "Angela," he said, voice rough with remorse, "please, talk to me." "We have nothing to talk about," she answered, cold but shaking. "Leave." "I'm not leaving," Mark said, stepping past Patricia. "Not until you hear me. I know I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Angela laughed, joyless. "Is that what you call it, Mark? Throwing me out like trash, believing their lies. 4 months. I lived in hell for 4 months." "I know," Mark said, desperation breaking through. "I found the necklace." "The truth. Mom planned everything. I'm sorry, please." Mark Bennett, real estate king, went to his knees on the grimy floor. He braced his hands on the boards. His shoulders shook. "I'll make this right," he whispered. "I'll fight for you. For our child. I won't leave you again, I promise." Angela stilled, his kneeling, his words, punched through the wall of anger she'd built. She saw sincerity in his eyes, but also the memory of pain. Before she could answer, an arrogant pounding rattled the door. Not a knock, an attempt to break it in. They stared at each other. Patricia cracked the door. None of them expected the sight. Victoria Bennett, flanked by 2 uniformed security guards, swept in. Her couture dress and glittering jewelry mocked the room's poverty. Disgust twisted her face as she scanned the space, as if filth might leap onto her. "So this is where you've been hiding," she said, voice poisoned. She looked straight at Angela, ignoring her son. Mark lurched to his feet, face flooded with color. "What are you doing here?" "I'm taking you home," Victoria said coolly. "Leave this woman." "She's a disgrace." "I'm not going anywhere," Mark said, evenly. "And don't you dare talk to Angela like that." Victoria didn't hear him. She pushed past Patricia and stopped in front of Angela, raking her from head to toe with loathing. "How much?" she asked, voice glacial. "Name your price to leave my son alone." Angela stared, stunned. She shook her head. "You don't have enough money to pay for my humanity." Victoria's laugh was a blade. From her Hermes bag, she pulled a thick bundle of crisp bills, hundreds, and flung them at Angela's face. The notes fluttered down onto the stained mattress and floor like confetti at a grotesque celebration. "Is that what you call dignity?" Victoria sneered. "Trapping a millionaire with a baby?" "I know your kind. You're a snake." "Enough!" Mark roared. He lunged, wedging himself between them, eyes blazing at his mother. But no one expected what Angela did next. She bent and picked up the bills, her hands trembling, but her eyes lit with a fierce resolve. No one spoke. They watched her gather every note, stack them tight, and walk to Victoria. Every step was heavy, deliberate. She stopped inches away. When she raised her head, there was no fear, no tears, only pure, burning anger. Here's your money, she said, voice calm and razor-sharp. In a flash, she hurled the bundle back into Victoria's face. The impact knocked Victoria's glasses askew. Shove it down your throat. Your son is not a product. Neither am I, Victoria stood stunned, hand to her cheek. Angela slammed the door shut. The bang ended the conversation. But the moment the latch clicked, pain knifed through Angela's abdomen, sharper than before. She clutched her belly, cried out, and crumpled to the floor. Angela! Mark and Patricia shouted together, rushing to her. Down on the street, Mark caught a glimpse of his mother stalking to her car, fury and humiliation twisting her features. Their eyes met, no words. She climbed in and sped away. Dread flooded Mark. The price of dignity that night was nearly a life. The hospital's ceiling lights were merciless as Mark paced the narrow ER hallway. Every tick of the clock felt like judgment. Antiseptic stung his nose, a smell of illness and vulnerability. It had been an hour since they'd rushed Angela in. 1 hour of crushing silence and boiling worry. He had carried her out of that alley, her light body fragile in his arms. She moaned the whole drive, hands on her belly. Every sound was a blow to his chest. Patricia sat hunched in a plastic chair, head in her hands, her steel replaced by worry. Mark couldn't sit. Every doctor or nurse who slipped past the curtains drew his eyes. This is my fault, he whispered to Patricia. If I hadn't come. If my mother hadn't. Patricia lifted her head. Her eyes were red but still sharp. It's not your fault, Mark, she said tiredly. It's your mother's. But it's your responsibility now. Make sure they're okay, the word they landed hard. Angela and their child. At last, an older doctor emerged and called Angela's name. Patricia and Mark jumped up. Are you family? He asked. I'm her friend, Patricia said quickly, and before Mark could speak, he stepped forward. I'm the father of her baby, he said. The words felt new and heavy on his tongue. The doctor blinked, surprised, then nodded. Ms. Carter is stable for now, he said, but she's having premature contractions due to severe stress and physical exhaustion. She needs complete bed rest, no exertion. We'll keep her for observation a few days to protect the baby. Mark exhaled, relief loosening his chest. Can we see her? Patricia asked. We're moving her to a private room. Give us a few minutes, the doctor said, then left. When Angela was settled in a quiet, clean room, Patricia went in first. A few minutes later, she came out. Your turn, she told Mark. You two need to talk. But go slow, she's fragile. Mark nodded, drew a long breath and opened the door. Angela lay on her side, back to the door, small against the white sheets, an IV line threaded from her arm. She looked so small, so breakable. Mark approached carefully, afraid even his footsteps might disturb the hush. He stopped at the foot of the bed, at a loss. I know you're there, Angela said, voice faint, not turning. Mark swallowed. How do you feel? A brittle laugh. How do you think? I'm lying in a hospital bed after your mother threw money at my face. I'm great. The sarcasm couldn't hide the hurt. Mark sat in the chair beside her. Angela, please. Forgive me. You've said that, she replied, still facing away. Sorry doesn't erase what happened. I know, he said, but you need to know everything. Under the dim hospital light, he told her all of it. The necklace in the cabinet, his mother's admission, the fight, the choice he'd made to walk away from the money, the name, the family, just to find her. As he spoke, Angela slowly turned to face him, eyes searching for any hint of a lie. She found none, only a man wrecked by regret. When he finished, silence pooled between them. Machines hummed softly. At last, Angela spoke, barely above a whisper. "Why only now, Mark? Why did you let it go this far?" "Because I was a coward," he said, tears gathering. "Because I was blind, seduced by power and a last name. I thought love could be sacrificed for reputation. I was wrong about everything. Only you and our child matter." She didn't answer. She stared out the window. Night was giving way to ash-grey light. A single tear slid across her cheek onto the pillow, not from rage this time, but a deep sadness. Mark's phone buzzed. His attorney. He answered. "Mark, bad news," the lawyer said. "Your mother just called an emergency board meeting. She's invoking a clause in the bylaws to claim you're mentally and emotionally unfit to lead. She's trying to take over." Mark went numb. His mother wasn't backing down. She was escalating. He looked at Angela, worry etched on her face. In that moment, he decided he wasn't the coward he'd been. "Do whatever it takes to block her," he said evenly. "Freeze her access to corporate funds. Call our allies on the board. This is a war, and I'm not planning to lose." He hung up and took Angela's free hand. It was cool, but he didn't let go. "Listen to me, Angela," he said, voice steady in a way she'd never heard from him. "I won't let her hurt you again. I won't let her touch our child. I'll fight her. I'll fight everyone. For you." She searched his face. In the exhaustion and chaos, she saw something she hadn't seen in Mark's eyes for a long time. A promise. For the first time in 4 long months, she felt a little comfort. The next 2 days passed like a dream. Mark never left the hospital. His expensive suit was replaced by simple clothes sent from home. The chair beside Angela's bed became his cot. Lukewarm vending machine coffee his meals. They didn't talk much. Words felt either too small or too heavy. Instead, they spoke in small acts. He peeled fruit. He fluffed her pillows. He kept watch while she slept. Angela, wary but softening, let him in inch by inch. She didn't push his hand away when he offered water. Sometimes she caught him looking at her, and instead of turning, she held his gaze a heartbeat longer. The wall between them thinned. On the 3rd day, while Mark skimmed a business report on his tablet, a quiet sob broke the room. He looked up and found Angela crying, tears sliding silently down. "What hurts?" he asked, standing quickly. She shook her head. "I just remembered," she whispered. "Our plans. You said we'd build a family, a house full of laughter." She looked at him, eyes full of hurt. "How did we end up here?" The question pierced him. There was no easy answer. He sat on the bed's edge and for the first time took her hand without hesitation. "I don't know," he said softly, "but I promise we'll get it back." Before she could answer, pain seized her belly. Her face twisted. She cried out, "Mark!" "It hurts." He hit the call button. Nurses flooded in. After a quick exam, the doctor made the call. "Her water broke. We can't stop it. We have to deliver now." The room transformed in a rush. Nurses prepping, equipment rolling, calm replaced by purposeful storm. "Mr. Bennett, do you want to be inside?" a nurse asked. Mark looked at Angela and saw fear in her eyes. He nodded. "Yes, I'm not leaving her." Hours tested them both. The delivery room became sacred ground of pain, sweat, and hope. Mark never let go of Angela's hand. At each cry, he whispered in her ear, "You can do this." "I'm here." His presence anchored her in the storm. And after what felt like forever, a strong, healthy cry filled the room. A miracle in sound. Tears blurred Mark's and Angela's vision. They cried, not from pain, but from a joy so pure it hurt. "It's a boy," the doctor said, smiling. A nurse swaddled the tiny newborn and laid him on Angela's chest. Exhausted, she lifted a trembling hand and stroked his soft cheek. "Hi, baby," she whispered, voice broken and bright. Mark stared at the little bundle, the wrinkled skin, the soft hair, the tiny fingers. A piece of him, a piece of Angela, love made flesh that had almost been lost. "He's perfect," Mark breathed, kissing Angela's forehead. In that moment, all the rage, hurt, and regret fell away. Only love remained. Hours later, while Angela rested and the baby slept in the incubator, Mark sat quietly, watching them from the chair by the window. This was his family, and he swore to himself he would protect them no matter what. The door burst open without a knock. Victoria Bennett swept in, face a mask of cold resolve, 2 attorneys on her heels. "Well, well," she said, voice dripping with disdain. "Congratulations." But her eyes went straight to the sleeping infant. "I'm here to take my grandson, the sole heir of the Bennett family." Mark stood at once, alert. "What do you think you're doing?" "Simple," Victoria said, as if explaining a business deal. "That woman is unfit to raise a Bennett. We'll take full custody. She'll get money to live comfortably, on the condition she leaves the child and disappears." The words hit like slaps. Angela woke at the noise, caught the tail end of Victoria's speech, and fear crossed her face. She got up quickly and clutched her baby tight. "No," she whispered. "You won't take my child." Victoria smirked. "You can't fight me, girl." "The best attorneys in the country are on my side. We'll destroy your character in court. We'll paint you as a gold digger and a bad mother." A nurse rushed in, alarmed by the raised voices. "Ma'am, sir, you can't shout here. This is a patient. Get out!" Victoria snapped at the nurse. The thing no one expected was Mark's stillness. He didn't shout. He didn't thrash. He walked until he stood squarely between his mother and the bed, an unmistakable barricade. "Leave," he said calmly. "Don't be ridiculous, Mark," Victoria scoffed. "I said leave," he repeated, voice lower, heavier. "I'm not leaving without my grandchild," she shot back. "His name is Leo," Mark said. The name came out of him without effort. "And he's not an heir. He's my son. Our son." He glanced at Angela and gave a small, certain smile, then faced his mother again. "We're done, Mom. You have no power over me anymore. None over us." He pulled out his phone and called hospital security. "Security, please come to room 502. There's a trespasser causing a disturbance. Her name is Victoria Bennett." Victoria went pale. Being labeled a trespasser in a building owned by one of her business partners was an insult of the highest order. "How dare you!" she hissed. "You left me no choice," Mark said evenly. "Walk out now, or I'll have you dragged out." Jaw clenched, Victoria stared at Mark, then at Angela holding Leo. Her eyes promised revenge. "This isn't over," she said, and marched out with her lawyers. Silence sank back over the room. Mark sagged against the wall, strength leaking away. A gentle squeeze on his hand made him look down. Angela. Her eyes were full of tears, not of pain or fear this time, but of gratitude. "Leo," she whispered, testing the name. "A good name." "A lion. A fighter," Mark squeezed back. "That's what he'll be. And we'll protect him, together." For the first time, in the middle of chaos, they felt like a real family ready to fight. The hospital incident was a declaration of war for Victoria Bennett. Being escorted out by security wasn't just humiliation, it was betrayal at the highest level. Her own son had chosen a woman she despised over her. Rage burned in her like an unquenchable fire. For Mark, that night burned the last bridge. There was no going back. His world now revolved around 2 people, Angela and their newborn son, Leo. In the days that followed, the hospital became a small fortress. With Patricia's help, Mark tightened security. No one entered without permission. Calls were screened. The threat from his mother was no bluff. As Angela regained strength and Leo grew bigger and healthier, something between them shifted. Long, heavy silences gave way to small conversations, not about the past or their future, but about Leo. His yawns, his tiny fingers curling around Mark's thumb, his peaceful sleep on Angela's chest. Their child became the center of their universe, a bridge carefully rebuilding what had been broken. One afternoon, Mark paced with Leo, now fully out of the incubator in his arms, trying to settle him. Angela sat on the bed and watched, a faint smile touching her lips. "I didn't think I'd ever see this," she said softly. "See what?" Mark asked. "You," Angela said. "Like this." "A father." She smiled a little more. "I used to think the only things that mattered to you were your bank accounts and the towers you built." "That was then," Mark said, gently patting Leo's back, "before I knew what really matters." Their eyes met. Understanding bloomed, deeper than words. Their peace didn't last. Outside, Victoria moved her pieces. Board members of Bennett Corporation began calling Mark. They were concerned. Victoria was spinning stories. Mark was unstable, manipulated by a deceitful woman. The company's future was at risk. "She's poisoning the well," Patricia said over the phone late one night, while Mark stood just outside the room so Angela wouldn't hear. "She's building a case. If you don't act, she'll win." "I know," Mark said. "I'm already a step ahead." The morning Angela was to be discharged, a nurse walked in carrying a large bouquet of white roses with no card. "Who are these from?" Angela asked. "Throw them away," Mark said, cold as ice. He knew the sender, a warning, a message. When they stepped out to leave, the chaos was waiting. A crowd of reporters and cameramen swarmed the hospital's front steps. Flashbulbs exploded. Questions flew like bullets. "Mr. Bennett, is it true you have a child out of wedlock? Who is this woman? Are you being removed as CEO of your own company?" Mark shielded Angela and Leo, pushing through as hospital security carved a path, but the media clung like rats. "This way, sir," a guard shouted. Through the frenzy, Mark saw the source. Leaning against a luxury car, Victoria watched the reporters, a small, triumphant smile on her lips. She had tipped the media, turned a private moment into a circus. Once inside the car and rolling, Mark's fury detonated. "She's a monster," he said, striking the seat. "She used her own grandchild for a media spectacle." Angela trembled, clutching Leo. "Where are we going, Mark?" "We can't go to your place. They'll find us." "We're not going there," he said, voice shifting to a calm, dangerous edge. "We're going somewhere else." Their destination wasn't a safe house or a hotel. Mark drove straight to Midtown, stopping in front of Bennett Tower. "What are we doing here?" Angela asked, fear tight in her voice. "Finishing this," Mark said. "Wait here. I'll be right back." Before she could protest, he was out of the car and inside. Employees froze and whispered as he passed. He rode the elevator to the executive floor. When the doors opened, Victoria was there, waiting outside the boardroom with several allies. Surprise flashed across her face. "Mark, what are you doing here? This meeting is for the board only." "I know exactly what you're doing," Mark said, striding forward, presence crackling with an authority people hadn't seen in him for a long time. "You're trying to destroy me. But the game is over." "You don't know what you're talking about," Victoria said, trying to hold her composure. "Don't I?" Mark asked, pushing open the boardroom doors. The remaining directors looked up, startled. Victoria followed, worry blanching her features. "Gentlemen," Mark began, "my mother has been spreading lies about my mental state to claim I'm unfit to lead. I want you to know not only am I fit, I've never been clearer." He laid a folder on the table and fanned out documents. "These prove that for the past 2 years, My mother has been illegally diverting company funds to her personal offshore accounts. Millions stolen from this company, from all of us. Silence crashed over the room. All eyes swung to Victoria, now paper white. That's a lie. You fabricated those, she snapped. Really? Mark aimed a projector at the wall. Bank transfers appeared, fake invoices, signatures, hers. I had my suspicions. Now I have confirmation. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe my own mother wouldn't steal from me. I was wrong. He looked each board member in the eye. I can take this to the police. I can have her arrested, but she's still my mother, so I'm offering a deal. He turned to Victoria. You will resign from the board immediately. You will relinquish all your shares to a trust in my son's name, Leo Bennett. You will have no power, no say in this company, and most of all, you will not approach or harass my family ever again. Do that and this folder never leaves this room. The ultimatum was clean, her career or her freedom. Victoria sank into a chair, strength draining. The empire she'd built shattered in minutes. She stared at Mark, not with anger now, but a warped blend of disgust and unwilling awe. The son she'd thought weak had become a force she herself had forged. It's over, Mark said at last. He turned and walked out, leaving confusion in his wake. Back in the car, he slid into the driver's seat, heavy-eyed. Angela saw it in his face. No triumph, only a deep sadness. Is it over? She asked softly. Mark nodded. It's over. For the first time, Angela reached across and took his hand, a simple gesture of understanding and support. They drove home that evening as a family, and to them, it was a new beginning. Weeks later, Victoria left the country to Thailand, but not before apologizing to Angela. She had hoped to see and carry Leo, but was refused. Even though Angela had forgiven her, it was still too early. One sunny afternoon, they went out for a picnic in the park with baby Leo. There, Mark got onto one knee and proposed to a shocked Angela, who accepted amidst tears. An oblivious Leo squealed as if he understood what was going on, and they all laughed. Angela looked at her family and thanked God for everything. The end. This is Mr. Hope, and I love you all.